Case 1. Johnstown, Pennsylvania, May 31, 1889. The South Fork Dam stood 14 miles upstream of Johnstown, Pennsylvania. It was an earthen dam, poorly maintained, owned by the South Fork Fishing and Hunting Club, a private retreat for Pittsburgh's industrial elite. The club had purchased the dam in 1879 and modified it in ways that reduced its safety. They lowered the crest. They impeded the drainage. Several days of extremely heavy rainfall preceded the failure. The dam held 14.55 million cubic meters of water. At 3:10 p.m. on May 31st, the dam gave way. The water traveled at 40 miles per hour. The wave reached 60 feet high. It moved with a volumetric flow rate that temporarily equaled the average flow rate of the Mississippi River. The flood killed 2,208 people, among them 396 children under the age of 10. 99 entire families wiped out. 755 bodies never identified. The South Fork Fishing and Hunting Club was never held legally responsible. A coroner's jury found the club negligent, but no charges stuck. Survivors spent decades fighting for compensation and lost. The disaster later contributed to American tort law, allowing strict liability in some circumstances. Case 2. Gleno Dam, Italy. December 1st, 1923. The Gleno Dam was a multiple-arch buttress dam on the Gleno Creek in northern Italy's Valle di Scalve. Construction began in 1916. The purpose? Hydroelectric power. In September 1920, local officials warned that contractors were not using proper cement mortar. The warning was ignored. In 1921, the project ran out of funding. The design was changed from a gravity dam to a multiple arch type. Cheaper, weaker. The concrete in the arches was of poor quality. It was reinforced with anti-grenade scrap netting salvaged from World War I. By October 1923, the reservoir was full after heavy rains. 40 days later, at 6:30 a.m. on December 1st, a buttress cracked. Within minutes, 4.5 million cubic meters of water, 3,648 acre-feet, gushed from the reservoir. The village of Bueggio flooded first, then Dezzo, then the valley below. At least 356 people died. Some estimates put the figure closer to 500. The investigation found the fundamental cause: static insufficiency of the masonry, both in dimensions and material consistency. Poor workmanship. Cheap materials. Warnings dismissed. Case 3. St. Francis Dam, California, March 12, 1928. The St. Francis Dam was a curved concrete gravity dam built by the Los Angeles Bureau of Waterworks and Supply between 1925 and 1926. It stood 30 miles northwest of Los Angeles. William Mulholland, the man who built the Los Angeles Aqueduct, was chief engineer. The dam's purpose? Provide a reservoir for the aqueduct. Cracks and leaks appeared in the dam and its abutments. Mulholland dismissed them as normal. On March 7, 1928, the reservoir was filled to capacity for the first time. Mulholland inspected the dam. He proclaimed it safe. 5 days later, just before midnight on March 12th, the massive concrete wall collapsed. Billions of gallons of water rushed down San Francisco Canyon toward the Pacific Ocean. The wave started at 120 feet high. It traveled 54 miles. The towns of Castaic Junction, Fillmore, Bardesdale, and Piru were flooded. More than 1,000 houses were damaged or destroyed. The official death toll, 450. The actual number was likely higher. Transient farm workers, illegal immigrants. Their bodies were never recovered, never counted. The investigation concluded the dam failed primarily because the San Francisco rock was unsuitable for supporting a dam and reservoir. Mulholland had built on a fragile, fracture-prone mica schist formation and a dormant paleo landslide. He was cleared of criminal charges. He accepted full responsibility anyway. "Don't blame anyone else," he said. "You just fasten it on me." His reputation was destroyed. His career ended. Case 4. Malpasset Dam, France, December 2nd, 1959. The Malpasset Dam was a concrete arch dam on the Rayron River in southern France, near Fréjus. Completed in 1954, it was the thinnest arch dam of its height, 218 feet tall, with a maximum thickness of just 22.2 feet. The reservoir's first filling began in April 1954. It took 5 years to complete. On December 2, 1959, after several days of heavy rain and high winds, the dam suddenly failed. The reservoir level was just 0.3 meters below the spillway crest. The collapse was total, the only complete failure of an arch dam ever recorded. The flood wave killed 421 people. 400 more bodies were never found. Emergency rescue attempts failed. The town's flooded roadways were inaccessible. The cause? Entirely geological. Inadequate site investigation failed to identify a fault plane in the rock foundation. Poor field investigations on a mica-schist foundation, crisscrossed by faults. Case 5. Vajont Dam, Italy. October 9, 1963. The Vajont Dam was one of the highest dams in the world, 262 meters tall, 860 feet. It stood 100 kilometers north of Venice. Completed in 1961, it was an engineering marvel. But the geology of the gorge was not fully understood. Ancient landslides were known, but believed stable. During filling, shifts in the rock were noticed. On November 4, 1960, a lesser landslide of under 1 million cubic meters occurred. The water level was lowered. The reservoir was refilled slowly under monitoring. Calculations showed catastrophic failure unlikely. The reservoir was filled and slowly emptied 3 times. Warnings were ignored. On October 9, 1963, at 10:39 p.m., heavy rains and the third drawing down triggered an enormous landslide. 260 million cubic meters of forest, earth, and rock fell into the reservoir at 110 kilometers per hour. The displacement created a wave, 250 meters high, 820 feet. The wave overtopped the dam. The dam's structure remained intact. The top meter of masonry washed away, but the concrete held. It didn't matter. The megatsunami destroyed the village of Longarone. Then, Pirago, Rivalta, Villanova, Faye. 7 villages completely destroyed. Almost 2,000 people died. The risks were known. The warnings were documented. The operators consciously chose to ignore them. Case 6. Machchhu Dam 2, Gujarat, India. August 11, 1979. The Machchhu Dam 2 was an earth-fill dam on the Machchhu River in Gujarat, India. It was built in 1972, downstream of an earlier dam. The purpose? Irrigation. The primary design consideration? Water supply for a drought-prone region, not flood control. The dam had a masonry spillway 206 meters long with 18 sluice gates, flanked by long earthen embankments. The spillway capacity? 5,663 cubic meters per second. On August 10, 1979, monsoon storms poured over Gujarat. 10 days of persistent rainfall followed. The actual observed flow reached 16,307 cubic meters per second, 3 times what the dam was designed for. On August 11th, in the early afternoon, the water overtopped the earthen embankments. The 4-kilometer-long dam disintegrated. The water slammed into the town of Morbi. The official government death toll, 1,800. Unofficial estimates range from 5,000 to 25,000. Some media reported 25,000 dead. The Press Trust of India reported at least 1,335. The floodgates had been wrongly designed for passage of only 220,000 cubic feet per second. The dam was never built to handle the monsoon it was supposed to control. The disaster was the result of large-scale government design failures. Case 7. Banqiao Dam, China. August 8, 1975. The Banqiao Dam was built on the Ru River in the early 1950s as part of a flood prevention and electricity production program. It stood 118 meters high, with a storage capacity of 492 million cubic meters. It was designed to withstand a 1,000-year flood. Cracks appeared after completion due to construction and engineering errors. They were repaired. Soviet engineers advised. The dam was considered unbreakable. A hydrologist named Chen Xing had recommended 12 sluice gates. The design was scaled back to 5. He warned the dam was inadequate. His warnings were ignored. In early August 1975, Typhoon Nina stalled over Henan province. The first day's precipitation exceeded 40 inches, more than 1/5 of the area's total annual rainfall. 3 more days of downpours followed. Total rainfall? 1,631 millimeters in 3 days. The flood was twice the 1,000-year level. The dam's 5 sluice gates could not handle the overflow. Sedimentation blocked them. Downed communication lines prevented warnings. At 1 a.m. on August 8th, the dam began to collapse. The wall of water reached 33 feet high and 7 miles wide, traveling at 30 miles per hour. The town of Daowensheng, just downstream, was immediately inundated. All 9,600 citizens were killed. 61 other dams and reservoirs failed that day in a cascading collapse. 26,000 people died in the floods, according to the official Chinese death toll. An estimated 145,000 more died from epidemics caused by contaminated water and from famine. Some estimates put the total death toll at more than 220,000. Over 10 million people were affected. In the aftermath, China examined every reservoir in the country. Shenxing, whose warnings had been ignored, was brought back to help clear the river channels. The dam was rebuilt, completed in 1993. Every failure in this list had prior warnings. Every single one. At Johnstown, the club knew the dam was unsafe. At Gleno, officials reported the poor mortar. At St. Francis, Mulholland saw the cracks and called them normal. At Malpasset, the geology was never properly surveyed. At Vajont, the mountain was moving for 2 years, and they watched it happen. At Machchhu, the dam was built for drought, not flood. At Banqiao, the hydrologist begged for more gates. The water was never the enemy. The water was just the messenger. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe for similar ones, and feel free to drop suggestions for the next video in the comments.